Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Yehi sangsparshaja bhoga dukkayonaya evate adyantavanta kaunteya nateshu ramate buddhaha. Okay, read out the word for word and everything else. Lord Krishna states in Bhagavad Gita, Chatur vidha bhajante mam jana sukritin arjuna arto jignasur artharti jnanicha bharatarshata. We live in a very difficult time. This Kali Yuga is everything is very difficult. Everything is very troublesome. So we find that many people taking to Krishna consciousness doing one major factor is that they are distressed. Seeking relief from distress, they take refuge in God. So, if we are to turn to God, that's all right, because they mostly need to hear Tamil. Then some confusion may come. Well, how do we know who is God? There are many different ideas about who is God. In Krishna consciousness we state that the Supreme Lord is a cowherd boy in blue. And he has various forms. Many of them are four-handed. Mostly the temples of Vishnu in this Tamil Nadu, they're four-handed. Here he's two-handed. Then in other religions, some religion they say that God became a man and died for 3 days. You want to know that? Oh, okay. So they have an idea of a dying God. God dies and comes back to life again. In another religious system they say that, well, God, he spoke to a prophet, but he doesn't have any form. So he's not a person, but he spoke to a prophet. So there are various ideas, and we may wonder, well, how can we know what's correct? As one of the distressed, or persons who came to Krishna consciousness in a very distressed condition, this verse which we just read today, Yehi Sangsparshaja Bhoga, this is very convincing to me. Being one of the persons who came to Krishna consciousness in a state of distress, this statement of Bhagavad Gita, which we just read today, that all endeavors are full of suffering, it very much appealed to him. What is the nature of the Supreme? Not Bhagavan, the Supreme. Param Tattva, you could say. What is the nature of the Supreme? Considering that we are very, very small, how can we understand what is the nature of the Supreme? But one thing we can understand is that this material world is full of suffering. When Krishna states in Bhagavad Gita, Aham sarvasya prabhavaha, I am the source, everything is generated by me, I am the source of everything. We may say, well, how do we know? Of course, there are various forms of evidence for that. But one thing we can very directly experience in our lives, it's pratyaksha or direct perception, is how material life is full of suffering. Of course, some people don't perceive that. They think, well, it's not so bad. It's pretty good. But then again, Krishna points out in Bhagavad Gita, Janma mrityu jara vyadhi dukkha doshan darshanam. One who is in knowledge, he sees that birth, death, old age and disease are miserable. Please stop doing this. Just stop. Stop. We appreciate your efforts, but not very much. Now, of course, in Buddhism, they also iterate this point very strongly, that everything in this world is miserable. We have a very different outlook, although we agree on this point, but we have a very different outlook to the Buddhists. Traditionally, the Vaishnavas have been strongly opposed to Buddhism, as is evidenced by the Vimanam over Ranganatha Swami. Those who know the... Yeah, but it's just a disturbance. Again and again. And then, and then it makes the feedback sound. No need, we will adjust. Take that on that. Take that. Please, just take a second.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
So if we agree with them on this point, what is that life is full of suffering, then where is the disagreement? That they have no hope of any happy state. They presume that there's only the distress of this material world and nothingness. They have to escape from this and then nothing, just become nothing, or there is nothing. So there are other kinds of distressed people. It's not that every distressed person takes to Krishna consciousness. Some people in distress, they go further away from God consciousness. Vitaraga bhayakrodha manmaya mamupashataha bahavo jnana tapasa utamad bhavamadataha. Srila Prabhupada explains that this one has to become free from bhayam, raga, bhayam and krodha to take to Krishna consciousness. Persons who are grossly attached to this material world, they cannot become actually God conscious. We see some people who they appear to be very devoted to God, but they're praying to Him for material benefits. So that's not really bhakti. Srila Prabhupada explained that it's like a kind of business, that I'll offer you some incense and you'll give me all material facilities. She's chanting japa. Chanting japa. Don't chant japa now. Listen to the things. Then bhaya means fear. That being afraid of spiritual existence, being afraid of any existence, thinking that existence is all miserable, then people don't like to think that beyond this material existence there is spiritual existence. They don't like to hear of Krishna's transcendental pastimes. They think that this yehi sansparshaja bhoga dukkha yonya evate, that all activities are full of distress. They think that applies to Krishna's pastimes also. Certain very sinful persons consider Krishna to be a person subject to karmic reactions. Now, if we examine Krishna's activities, considering him as an ordinary person, we come to
I mean, that's a wrong premise, and it leads to a very wrong conclusion. Because Krishna is a liar, a thief, a cheater, a womanizer. So he is all these things, but he's also fully transcendental to all material contaminations. If we don't understand this and we try to hear about Krishna or try to judge Krishna, then, like I said, we make very wrong calculations. So people who, when they don't want to hear about Krishna's person, it's family, boys and girls and playing, it all ends in distress. They feel everything ends in distress. They think that the ultimate reality there is no ultimate reality. Everything is nothing. Or similar to, here's the Madonna player, but he's not interested in hearing any philosophy, going out and talking on the cell phone. Hare Krishna! What's the use of banging on a drum if you don't like to hear? First comes Shravan, then Kirtan. So the Mayavadis and the Shunyavadis, they argue with each other, but they have the same misconception about Krishna, similar misconceptions. And certain persons become angry. There is no God, there is no God, there is no God, they say. They're angry at God. Actually, it's not that they disbelieve in God, they believe in Him, but they hate Him. Just like we don't have to say that there's no Gamal. 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 How did you translate Gamal? Gamal. Not camel. Gamal. Well, there's no such thing as it, so it doesn't exist. So there's no need to say there is no Gamal, there is no Gamal, there is no. So if there is no God, then why do you have to keep on saying there's no God? What they're really saying is that I wish there wasn't a God because I want to be God. Such people are rascals. Just like there's this certain person who they made a statue of with the birds pass stool on here in Srirangam. They wanted to make a new deity. He's one of these people who say there is no God. But long, long after he is forgotten, people will still be coming here and worshipping Perumal. Everyone comes here and takes darshan of Perumal and no one cares for Periya. He says there's no God when God says there's no Periya. Some worm in stool, somewhere. Now, if I say that, his followers might become very angry. But if what he says is true, then what I say it has no meaning anyway. So why should they get upset? So he also saw this world is full of suffering, but he was such a fool that he thought that it's just one in a long history of fools who thought that we can make this world better by making some social adjustments or scientific adjustments. The whole history of the material world is of foolish people trying to enjoy this material world and overcome the difficult conditions and make it a nice place to live. But the really important history is of persons who showed us the way beyond all suffering, and to the spiritual world which is full of pleasure. We can accept that there is a spiritual world full of happiness. We can accept that on faith. Bhagavad Gita states very clearly that this world is miserable. That we can practically experience. Persons who are foolish and unfortunate, they think this material world is a place of pleasure. But it is simply foolishness to think so. If we just consider Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi Dukkha, it's inescapable. We all have to suffer birth, death, old age and disease. But Bhagavad Gita gives us information of another world. That we can accept on faith. Bhagavad Gita gives us such clear information of how miserable this material world is, but also speaks of the land of good hope. In certain religious systems they have the idea of going to heaven. They have the idea, well, this place is not so good, but there is a place where we can go, where we can enjoy our senses, unrestricted. But Bhagavad Gita, and especially Srimad Bhagavatam, give us information of the world of bliss, but that bliss is on a completely different basis to the so-called happiness of this material world. This statement, yehi sangsparshaja bhoga dukkha yonya evate, that's true not only here on this earth, but even in Swarga. The endeavor to enjoy our senses, in any situation, that endeavor is simply the cause of our distress. Entrance into the world of bliss comes when we understand that we are not meant for bhoga, we are meant for seva. The spiritual world is the world of enjoyment, Krishna's enjoyment. And all other living beings in the spiritual world, they simply cooperate to enhance Krishna's enjoyment. And in this way, they experience tremendous bliss. Because that is the nature of the soul, to be blissful in the service of Krishna. Hopelessness, or skepticism. There is no God, there is no existence. This is denying our natural propensity to want to be happy. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be happy. Naturally, we aspire for happiness. But there's a lot wrong with wanting to be happy in any way except by trying to enhance Krishna's happiness. Any attempt at trying to be happy without trying to enhance Krishna's happiness is simply a cause of distress. If we think, well, I'll be a selfless social worker and help others, that selflessness, it's not actually selflessness, it's foolishness. Without the endeavor to satisfy Krishna, all endeavors are simply causes of distress. So if we think we'll help others by giving them food and clothing and education and medical care and all these things, it's simply increasing the distress of those persons' distress. They might think, well, that's much. I got some food, so now my distress is relieved. But actually it's a cause of distress. Instead of being hungry distressed, they're not hungry distressed. Everyone in this material world is in a state of distress. So you may think, well, it's better to be full belly distressed than hungry distressed. But the basic condition of distress, that is not mitigated by giving a meal. Birth, death, old age and disease, this relentlessly flays the conditioned soul. So we might think we're helping someone. It may seem like that. Just to give an example, if someone is being thwacked with a heavy stick every 2 minutes. Yeah, beaten, that's a common one. So that's distressful, isn't it? So if someone arranges that that 2 minutes, okay, one time they'll stop the beating. So for one time you have a break of 4 minutes. It didn't really help the person at all. So this so-called improving the material condition, it's like that. The hungry man is given food and then he thinks, oh, now I can enjoy my senses, but he has to go on suffering in this material world. By giving the sense of some happiness, that now I'm in a better situation to enjoy this material world, he sets himself up for more distress. Because however much you make arrangement for feeding people and clothing people and giving medical care, still people have to suffer birth, death, old age and disease. To give hope to people that they can be happy in any way except by surrendering to Krishna is violence to them and a cause of distress to them. In the name of helping persons, all this mundane welfare work, it's just another form of violence, or it's another form of envy of one conditioned soul to another. The only actual way to help people is by giving them knowledge of their actual blissful situation in the service of Krishna. All other pretensions of helping are just that, pretensions. So these teachings of Bhagavad Gita should be understood. Otherwise, we may be chanting Hare Krishna, but if we don't understand this basic principle that everything is meant for the pleasure of Krishna, then even in the name of Bhakti, we may be simply looking for some more pleasure for ourselves. Just like someone might think, well, I like banging on the drum, but I don't like to listen to any philosophy. So whatever I like, I'll do. But that is not Bhakti. We have to regularly hear the philosophy, the understanding of Krishna consciousness to rectify our diseased understanding. Again and again and again, our consciousness turns toward sense enjoyment. So it's very useful for us to understand that I won't be happy like this. It is not possible at all. It's a complete impossibility. It's as impossible as a square circle. Obviously a circle cannot be square because by very definition a circle doesn't have, by definition a circle is shaped differently to a square. So similarly, it is absolutely impossible to be happy in this material world or in material consciousness. Because material consciousness, by definition, is full of suffering. And the endeavor the endeavor to become happy in this material world, that simply increases the suffering. The endeavor for material happiness increases, although we think it's going to make us happy, it actually increases the suffering. In two ways it increases the suffering. One way it increases the suffering is that, as this verse states, that just by all endeavors in material life, they're simply they are by nature full of suffering. Just like people now in the modern age, people have so many things which are advertised for their happiness. You get a Bajaj, and now you're going to have to get a nano car. So many facilities are there, but it doesn't make us happy. It increases the pollution and noise. We have to work to make so much money to purchase and maintain all these things. So it increases our suffering. So directly it increases our suffering, and it also increases our suffering by making us think that we'll be happy, but then we're disappointed. Therefore, nateshu ramate buddhaha. Persons who are intelligent, they don't try to enjoy that which is not enjoyable. But they're not so unintelligent as to think that there is no enjoyment anywhere. Ramante, that's quoted in this purport. Ramante yoginas, what is it? Ramante yogino nanta satyananda chidatmani kati rama kadena so param brahma vidhiti. It's quoted in this purport. Yes. So, you can say translation. Ramante yogino nante satyananda chidatmani. So there is pleasure. There is unlimited pleasure. Ramante yogino nante. The yogis, they enjoy unlimited pleasure. That is satyananda. That is actual pleasure. But that is not the pleasure of this material world. That is chidatmani. That is on the completely spiritual platform. What is that pleasure? What is the source of that spiritual pleasure? Iti Rama Padenaso. That pleasure, the reservoir of all pleasure, is Rama. Or Krishna. Rama is another name for Krishna. So let us always remember this. As our mind goes to, let me enjoy this, let me enjoy that. Let us remember that for unlimited lifetimes we've been trying to enjoy this material world. When I was a dog, I enjoyed running around on the street with other dogs, but it wasn't enjoyment. When I was a lion, I enjoyed all the other animals fearing me, but that wasn't enjoyment. When I was a worm in stool, I thought, this is such nice stool, but it wasn't enjoyment. When I was a buffalo, I enjoyed going into the water, but it wasn't enjoyment. Now we have the opportunity to understand Bhagavad Gita as it is. That beyond this world of guaranteed, they say guaranteed satisfaction, but actually this material world is guaranteed dissatisfaction. So beyond this world of guaranteed dissatisfaction, there is the world of actually guaranteed satisfaction. When we simply act for Krishna's satisfaction, then certainly we will be satisfied. And here in this material world also, if we stop trying to act for our own satisfaction and simply try to act for Krishna's satisfaction, then the conditions of the material world, they do not apply to us. In this material world, all endeavors, beginning, middle and end, are simply causes of distress. But in Krishna consciousness, beginning, middle, and there is no end. Everything is blissful. That is why devotees, although apparently living in this material world, do not live in this material world. They live with Krishna. Simple formula. The simple formula is simply try to satisfy Krishna. So the beginning of spiritual life is, Srila Prabhupada wrote that unless one feels disgusted with material existence, one cannot actually begin Krishna consciousness. Real Krishna consciousness doesn't begin unless we feel disgusted with the prospect of material enjoyment. So it's very reasonable to have faith in the statement of Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita that this material world is simply a place of suffering. And it's reasonable to accept that beyond this condition of suffering, there is a state of actual happiness. The natural propensity of the soul to seek happiness is satisfied in service to Krishna. Simple point to understand. But those who are sinful, they cannot understand. They will protest. And they will go on protesting. This morning we were talking of crows. The crow says, "Kak, kak, kak." He is saying, there is no God except me. The buffalo, we just talking about buffaloes. So the buffalo says, "Oh, oh." He's saying, there is no God but me. The donkey, who knows what sound a donkey makes? It makes a big noise. It shouts out very loud and then it becomes quiet. He's saying, there is no God but me. Then when we come to the human form of life, instead of just one tune like "ka" or we have so many books of philosophy. We're writing so many different ideas. But it's the same thing. There is no God but me. So when we stop talking all this nonsense, then we chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. That means to accept that yes, there is Bhagavan, he is Krishna, and I am his eternal servant. Simply by accepting this, then all the unlimited distress of material existence is vanquished. That's all. It's very simple. Krishna consciousness is very simple. There's no need to discuss so much complex philosophy. Simply, if we accept that as Krishna, we are his servants, we should chant his names and serve him, then that is the perfection of life. Is there any question about this? You can get one set of my books. I had it before. Someone has a question? No, there is. You don't know about that? You're asking about... What's your question?
Maharaj, actually in the modern world we find the emotional people who are more inclined towards charity and all. If you come and
emotional people are inclined towards charity.
If you encounter such...
Why do you mean sentimental? Yeah. Then?
Come with attitude that or whatever you say I don't believe because charity is
this idea of being, I'm charitable, I'm helping others, it's another form of worshipping. They can't help anyone. The people they're so-called helping are going to hell, and they're also going to hell. So what is the helping? They're in ignorance. How should we deal with them? Give them one of Srila Prabhupada's books. We don't expect that everyone we can meet, we can just discuss with them and we can convince them. We'll go person to person and discuss and convince them, and in this way go through the 6 billion or so people in the world and one by one convince them. It doesn't happen like that. How many people in the world supposed to be nowadays? When I was a kid it was 5 billion. I suppose it's about 6 now. It's about 6 billion, is it? That's what they say. You can argue and fight with them and tell them that, and explain that you cannot actually help them. You cannot actually help anyone because you yourself are in ignorance. You can explain this. They may not accept it. If you like, you can try to explain it. Where are you from?
நீங்க எங்க இருந்து வந்திருக்கீங்க?
60 kilometers.
60. You don't know how you got that. He's asking about this golden vimana. It's solid gold. It stands as the testimony of Vaishnava opposition to Buddhism. Because previously that gold was a gold Buddha deity, which was forcibly taken, killing a few Buddhists, and made into a vimana over Lord Ranganath.
Krishna says to Kalayam Ashashvatam, give explanation for Ashashvatam.
Well, you'll find out fairly soon. How old is that bag of bones that you're presently inhabiting?
58.
58. Well, we don't expect that there'll be another 58 on top of that. So, within 58 years, you'll get direct experience of what Ashashvatam means. Of course, your body is spiritualized by chanting Hare Krishna. Still, you have to relinquish that body. For persons who are attached to their bodies, giving it up is greatly distressful. Hare Krishna. We will finish here. We'll chant. Go on with various activities. Lifetime chanting. Life after life chanting of Hare Krishna.